It's the black guy in the corner, but they'd rather see a nigga on the corner. They say I'm stealing Nick's clips like I'm stealing Nick's chick, not knowing that I hit him first week for the lick. I said, Nick, I could post here while you post there. Let's run the ads up, then let's meet up over there.
Good evening, everybody. You're watching America First. My name is Nicholas J. Fuentes. We have a great show for you tonight. Very excited and sick, but excited to be back here with you tonight on Thursday. We have a lot to talk about tonight, lots to get into. Big show. I'm going to have to take it easy, though. I'm sick. I'm so sick right now. I don't feel good. I have a cold. Everybody's like, pray for Nick. I'm not dying. I just have a terrible cold. And it's hard to do a show because the show involves a lot of breathing and talking and carrying on. So, but I'm going to be a trooper. After taking 2 days off for this cold, I'm going to be a trooper. I'm going to get it done. We got a big show, lots to talk about. Like I said, featured story. We're going to be talking all about the Epstein cover-up, which enters its third month, really. We're closing in on the third month of the Epstein cover-up in a few days. That'll be 2 full months. And the big story is that this week, a major press conference was held outside of Congress featuring some of Epstein's victims. Representative Thomas Massie and Khanna, a Republican and Democrat, are attempting to force a vote using a procedural method in the House, which would order the Department of Justice to release all the Epstein files that allegedly don't exist. I mean, let's not forget, in July, they didn't say we weren't getting the files. They said there are no files. They said all there is child porn. I said, that's all you're going to find. They said nobody has any right to see any more documents, files. There's no third parties. They said because, well, there's simply nothing there. All that's left is child sexual abuse material, which for obvious reasons cannot be publicized. Now they changed their tune. Apparently there are tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of files. They're withholding them. And as it stands right now, all 212 Democrats are voting to release the files. 4 Republicans are joining them. They need 2 more Republicans to break. And then we can have the files. Otherwise, it gets shut down. And it's honestly incredible. It was the Trump administration itself which campaigned on releasing the Epstein files. And it was the second Trump administration itself, which earlier this year said they were doing this. They said that there would be a phased release of all the previously classified Epstein files, which started in February with the binder photo op, that whole fiasco. And it's incredible that this administration for at least a year has been pushing the disclosure of the files. Now the administration says the opposite. They said that it's a hostile action to vote to disclose the files. So they go from, we will do it, we're the most transparent administration, we'll get to the bottom of it, to, if you still want that, you're an enemy of the government. And that's literally what Trump said this week. So we'll talk all about that. We're also going to talk tonight about the military strike off the coast of Venezuela. The president of No New Wars is at it again. The president of No New Wars has bombed what is allegedly a drug smuggling vessel manned by 11 crewmen off the coast of Venezuela. This was an airstrike, a lethal airstrike, which killed everybody on board. We don't really know what this is. The government is claiming that this is Tren de Agua, a drug cartel. They claim that this vessel was bringing drugs into America. They claim the legal authority to strike the vessel because they've rebranded all the drug cartels as terrorist organizations. So this is justified by the authorization of the use of military force in the global war on terror. But we don't know if any of that is true because the government keeps changing its story. There was one story which said that the vessel was headed to Trinidad. Another story said the vessel was headed towards America. We don't really know who was on board. We don't necessarily know if they were carrying drugs. If so, if they were bringing fentanyl or something deadly or something else. We don't even know if the government has the justified legal ability to use lethal force in this case. Nevertheless, this is something that is happening, and this is just the start. There is a massive force deployment off the coast of Venezuela. Destroyers, missile cruisers, submarines, radar, 4,500 soldiers, and we're also making preparations to intervene in Mexico as well, deploying special forces or drone strikes inside of Mexican territory with or without approval from their government. So this is yet another war we're getting into, and we'll talk about this one because, of course, everybody recognizes this intervention is different. It is different in kind than the other interventions. And in what way? Obviously, this is an intervention in our side of the world. So it is different. Not all wars are created equal. You've got our proxy war with Russia in Ukraine. You have our intervention in the Middle Eastern conflict, this regional conflict involving Israel, Iran, and Iran's proxies. And then you have what is something like a counterinsurgency, a fight against narco-terrorism, a regional, what they're calling narco-terrorism, a regional war, regime change in Venezuela. All of this is happening in the Western Hemisphere. And we'll talk about that in particular. I'll give you my take on it. Obviously, I'm, like a lot of people, less opposed to this, but I'm not the biggest fan of how this is being handled. And we'll talk all about that. Should be a pretty good show. Bear with me. Like I said, I'm not 100%. I am sick. I think I have some kind of, I have a pretty bad cold. I came home from Labor Day weekend. Some douchebag friend of mine got me sick. And so I haven't been feeling so hot. I would have done a show yesterday and the night before, but I was a mess. I have this terrible runny nose, sinus pressure, so it wasn't going to be great. But tonight I'm feeling a little bit better, so hopefully I'll be able to stick it out and finish the whole show. So please, no complaining. People are always complaining now. They say, you're sniffling all the time. You need to get that figured out. It's like I have a deviated septum, okay? I can't control that. Bear with me. But anyway, before we get into the news, I want to remind you to smash the follow button on Rumble, smash the like button, leave a comment. Let me know what you think about the show. Remember to get your hats. Whoops, there's my tea. Remember to get your hats. Fuentes.store, $40, made in America, free shipping. You got to get them in time for the holiday season because this is a pre-order. So it's going to take 6 to 8 weeks to get these made and then shipped out. So if you want them in time for Christmas, do not complain. If you order them on Black Friday and say, am I going to get them for Christmas? Probably not. I don't want to hear complaints. You got to get them now. Fuentes.store. Also, make sure to check out our archive at americafirst.plus, $15 a month. You get access to the whole archive, every episode of the show, thousands and thousands of hours of content, every debate, commentary stream, gaming stream, speech, interview. And it's perfect for those weeks when I'm not here doing the show because you get to watch the replays. And people like the replays because the show is very high quality, going back 8 or 9 years. So anyway, check that out as well. We're going to dive in here. The first thing I want to get to before we take a look at the news, the big stuff, I do just want to address this really quickly. Did you see this today? The Trump administration has officially signed an order renaming the Department of Defense to the Department of War. You see this on Twitter today? Serious stuff, guys. Oh, yes, after a week of, this is being reported for the past week 2 weeks. Highly anticipated. The Trump administration was moving towards this historic renaming of our Department of Defense. That's the Pentagon. The DOD manages all the branches of the military, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Space Force, etc. The Pentagon. The Trump administration officially renames the Department of Defense to the Department of War. Ooh, because as Trump says, we're not just on defense, we're also on offense. Sounds a lot cooler. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm just getting so sick of the slop, man. I'm done with the slop. Is that all this administration can do? It seems like this administration does two things. It renames existing things like the Gulf of Mexico, like the Persian Gulf, like military bases, like the Pentagon. It renames things and it polices anti-Semitism. You can't get your FEMA rescue money. You can't get your Harvard grants and loans. You can't get citizenship or a visa in America. Is that all this administration can do? We were promised revolutionary change. We were promised vengeance. We were promised a golden age. And what we're getting is renaming things, and like the ADL is on steroids. The ADL is taking steroids. They're looks maxing. That's all this administration seems to do. Cracker Barrel, who could forget? I mean, think about it. That's all this administration does. They came in, they renamed the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Oh, they renamed the Persian Gulf to the Arabian Gulf. They should have named it to the Gulf of Israel, right? Changed the names of the military bases back to Fort Bragg. Take that. And now this, they took the Cracker Barrel logo, brought it back to the original. Now we're changing the Department of Defense to the Department of War. And look, if the Trump administration was actually doing things, this would be a cool bonus. And maybe you could make a defense for it. No pun intended. Maybe there's a case to be made for this. But if you're not doing anything, like take a look around. The deportation's not happening. The legal immigration will continue. 600,000 Chinese students. War in Ukraine is, if anything, it's getting worse. We do this every night. I mean, you get it. The state of this administration, it's not making as much progress as it needs to be. It's way behind. And yet, every so often, they do these things, the military parade, Cracker Barrel logo, stuff like this. And it feels like it's very intentional. And it feels like it's designed basically to distract us. These are amusements. These are, it feels like, diversions. It is a signal, but signifying nothing. It is meant to signal that something has transformed, something essential about America is changing. This is a new country. We take bodies of water. We're fighting wars now. It's supposed to signal an essential underlying change, but there is no such underlying change. Everything seems to be exactly the same. Take, for example, Harmeet Dillon. She's heading up the Civil Rights Division in the DOJ. She's an Indian American. She did that tribute to Waheguru at the RNC last year. That's a Hindu, Sikh, Indian god. She's the head of the Civil Rights Division of the DOJ. At the National Conservatism Conference this week, she speaks before what is supposed to be our based nationalist conservatives that are using state power to just do things. And she spoke to this crowd of what are supposed to be our allies, and says that the Democrats are bringing their Klan robes and trying to stop us from enforcing equal opportunity. This is a Sikh Indian woman running the Civil Rights Division in the DOJ, and she's using the Dinesh D'Souza argument, the Democrats are the real Klansmen, fighting for equal opportunity in Trump's DOJ. You got Marco Rubio as the Secretary of State. Guy is a neocon. And what are we doing? We are prolonging and extending Joe Biden's Ukraine policy, John Bolton's Venezuela policy, Benjamin Netanyahu's Iran policy. And so this is where you look at what is purported to be a signal of deep change on the exterior. The Cracker Barrel logo will stay the same. Return to tradition. Modern logos are bad. And the Trump's America, we're going to a Creed concert and then to Cracker Barrel with the old logo. And we have the Department of War because we just do things. It's like the old days, but it isn't. But in every way, it is not. There is no change. And I've used this comparison before. Trump is vaporware. And it's almost a perfect comparison because when Trump got into office in 2016, the big cultural wave on social media was vaporwave. It was Macintosh Plus, it was vaporwave music, the Tron grid, the rising sun. This was the aesthetic. It was the vaporwave 80s aesthetic. And what is vaporware? It is a product that's advertised that never actually arrives. That's what vaporware is. It's like vapor. And that's what vaporwave represented. And that's really what the Trump administration is. It's a simulacrum. It's vapor. It's not real. It's a representation of something that isn't or was never real. And I'm just tired of being insulted. At this point, that's all it is insulting. Department of War? Why don't you end the wars or win a war? Something. You think about what it represents. The Department of Defense is our military. We're changing it to the Department of War. But the policies of the Department of Defense, the posture of the DOD has not changed at all. If the promise of Trump in 2016 was to put America first and end these interventions and bring the troops home, that hasn't happened at all. NATO is bigger than it was 10 years ago. By getting all these other countries to pay their fair share, we are more entrenched in NATO than ever. The Middle East, we're on the cusp of another war, this time with Iran. We now have a permanent presence in Syria, perhaps a permanent presence in Azerbaijan and Armenia. We're still in Iraq. And in Latin America, it seems like we're just getting started on yet another war. So it's like that America First non-intervention thing did not happen. At the same time, Trump promised we'd rebuild the military. We're going to have victories again. We haven't had one of those either. Can't win the war in Ukraine. Can't defeat the Houthis. Apparently did not destroy Iran's nuclear program. The military is an embarrassment. Look at our military parade this summer. Look at China's. In our military parade, we had a guy carrying a drone above his head like it was a paper airplane. Like it was like a Lego fighter jet or something. China's military parade, did you see it? Huge, impressive drones, tanks, synchronization, complex formations. We had a guy walking down the street holding up a drone like this. That's our rebuilt military. So just stop insulting. Either do something and stop, and then you can make the name changes, or don't. Now, don't call it the Department of War. Nothing has changed there. It's the same nonsense as before. You can change the name, and probably the next administration, if it's Democrat, they'll change it right back. It's the same thing that happened in the first administration. So anyway, I saw that today, and I'm just like, I'm out of patience with this kind of stuff. And how many think pieces are we going to get from I Am 1776, from Passage Press, all these jagoffs from Claremont Institute? How many think pieces are we going to get talking about the significance of changing the name to the Department of War? It signals a return to the Bronze Age. It signals a return to a time of testosterone when our ancestors smoked cigarettes and laughed when communists told them. Like, yeah, bro. It's the same nonsense. We're fighting. It's a Department of Wars for Israel. It's a Department of Wars for India and Israel. Who cares? They changed the name. It's actually not that deep. Anyway, but that's that. I do want to move on. I want to get into our news for the night. Our first story, we're going to talk all about the situation with Jeffrey Epstein. And like I said, this Epstein scandal is entering its third month, which is hard to believe. It all started, as you know, in the beginning of July when the DOJ put out a memo that said that basically the Epstein investigation is over. And by that, they mean that there will be no further disclosures, no more declassifications, no more documents. There will also be no third parties that will be investigated. So if you thought that any of these elite people that were clearly involved in this sex trafficking ring, if you thought they would be held accountable or they would face justice, the DOJ said there are no other investigations. Case closed. Additionally, they denied the nature of the Epstein scandal itself. They said there is no blacklist, or rather a black book, a list of clients. They said there was no sex trafficking ring. So they're basically denying the essence of the scandal itself and the basis of the initial charges almost 20 years ago. It's now been 2 full months since that took place, just under 2 months, entering the third month, and the Trump administration has a major problem. Back in July and August, they thought that if they just played for time, that eventually the summer recess would happen in Congress and other events would happen in the news, and eventually everybody would just forget about it. If Congress went home for the summer recess, they could not force a disclosure on the documents. And without pressure from Congress and with other things taking place in the news media, the administration thought this would just blow over. But now Congress is back in session. They're back from the summer recess, and as promised, this was said by Thomas Massie and Khanna before they left, they would be right back in D.C. when it was finished, pushing again for disclosure on the Epstein files. And they are. And so here we are. It's September. We're in the fall. We're in the home stretch, weeks away from another funding appropriations deadline. And Thomas Massie and Khanna are attempting to use a procedural measure inside the House of Representatives to force a vote on the floor of the House on the DOJ opening up and disclosing everything in the Epstein investigation. This is a story about that from the New York Times. It says, quote, with the Capitol towering behind them, several women who said they had been among Jeffrey Epstein's victims shared harrowing stories of sexual abuse, pleading with members of Congress to demand the Trump administration release all of its investigative files in the case. Lawmakers in both parties stood behind them, vowing to keep the pressure on for the disclosures. None of it appeared to be enough to outweigh the pressure from Mr. Trump and Republican leaders who moved quickly to squelch legislation that would require the DOJ to completely release what it uncovered about Epstein. Even as Mr. Epstein's accusers spoke at the Capitol, some of them growing emotional as they recounted their experiences, Mr. Trump at the White House dismissed the effort to get more files released as a Democrat hoax that never ends. So you've got the victims crying on the lawn of the Capitol. Trump is asked about it in the Oval Office. He says, that's a hoax, which is, as you can recall, this is doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on his strategy thus far, which is to pretend this is just not real. But it goes on, it says, Mr. Massie and Mr. Khanna's bill, which would require the DOJ to produce all its files about the Epstein investigation within 30 days, remains stalled. To force a floor vote on it, they need the majority of the House, or 218 members, to sign a so-called discharge petition. That's the procedural measure. With all 212 Democrats expected to sign, that means 6 Republicans are needed to move forward. As of Wednesday evening, the number of GOP signers was frozen at 4, and that includes Thomas Massie, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert, and Nancy Mace. The White House, for its part, has made its opposition to Massie's bill clear. Mr. Trump is known to target Republican lawmakers he sees as obstacles to his agenda. An official who described the Trump administration's thinking on the condition of anonymity said that signing the petition would be viewed as a very hostile act to the administration. So here we are. It is September. We're 8 months into this Trump administration. Remember, this is what we were promised. It's an insane level of gaslighting to pretend like this is some unreasonable request that Thomas Massie came up with, or that some unreasonable faction of the base came up with. We woke up on the wrong side of the bed, and us ingrates decided to be so unreasonable and so ungrateful and intractable that we're demanding something from the Trump administration that was never promised or never feasible or anything like that. Well, let's recall the Trump administration, rather the Trump campaign, promised throughout 2024 that we would get transparency on all these things. On 9/11, on JFK, on other assassinations, and on the Epstein files. He was asked about it repeatedly, and he said that he would release the files. Moreover, it was his son, Don Jr., it was J.D. Vance, his vice president. It was many of the influencers on the GOP payroll who for 4 years, this was their grift. Do you remember Don Jr. went to Turning Point USA, the president's son, who was involved in selecting the vice presidential nominee, who was involved in running the campaign? Don Jr. at Turning Point said, I'm on every FBI list. They want me so bad. I'm such an outlaw. He said, I'm on every list except the Epstein list. I wonder who's on there. I wonder why they won't show it to us. They created this. They played this up. They leaned into it for the better part of 4 or 5 years. That Epstein's a pedophile. He's on the island. He's running Lolita Express with the Clintons and all these people. They played this up. They leaned into it. They created this narrative. They promised transparency. They said it'd be the most transparent administration in history. And then they even went so far, once elected and inaugurated, to create this spectacle as though they were following through. Am I the only one that remembers this? They invited all the influencers to the White House, distributed binders that said Epstein files. That was ran out of the White House press office with the DOJ, and they held it up for the photo op. Look, most transparent administration ever. And it didn't take long. It took, I think, hours for the people that received the binders to upload them to social media. People read through them and said, there's no disclosure here. Where's the rest? And after ignoring that request for 5 months, the DOJ said, case closed, pack it up. That's it. It's over. And then within days shifted to, if you still want it, you're a traitor. If you still want it, you're a Democrat. You're an idiot. I don't want your support. This is a hoax. That's not real. You're an ingrate. You should be a Democrat. And here's the thing. This reveals the conceit of the Republican Party. Don't you get it? Don't you understand? This is the whole conceit of the GOP. The people that actually run this party, the people that are running this government, they're not like you and I. They don't care about the things you and I care about. And they also have no scruples about lying to you. Do you get it? For 4 years, they fed you all this crap about vaccines, about seed oils, about CRT and BLM, about this, about the Epstein files. And then they get into office, and what do? Who is Trump meeting with today? Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg. Ooh, that's gotta hurt. What happened? I thought MAGA, QAnon, the Proud Boys, the Trump supporters, the J6ers, they were being censored on Facebook and Instagram. Trump himself was banned on Facebook and Instagram. And for 4 years, they grifted, complaining about censorship on Facebook and Instagram. Now that Trump is president, he's dining with Mark Zuckerberg. Joking with him. Mark Zuckerberg was at the inauguration, all the rest. For 4 years, all these grifters, all these MAGA people grifted off of the anti-vaccine thing. Raised money, played that up, anti-vax, it's a bioweapon, etc. Now Trump is seated next to Bill Gates and says that they're going to work together on all these novel solutions and so on. And then you have the Epstein files. For 4 years, they leaned into, as a grift, the Epstein files, the Epstein disclosures. There's a pedophile conspiracy. There's a satanic pedophile conspiracy. Then they get into office and they turn around and bury it harder than Biden did. They do this with everything. Have you realized this by now? And you have to realize that this is a feature, not a bug. A lot of people's concept, their mental model for how this works is that we elect these candidates and they're fighting so hard, and we're fighting every day, and you got to take what you can get. And hey, man, it's only been a few months. They're trying really hard. And when the 4 years are up and they didn't deliver, well, we got to get them next time. And in reality, that's just not what's happening. In reality, the Republicans, they know they're lying to you. They know that they're lying to you. They think that you're idiots. They think that we're idiots. And they know what we care about, and they know what we talk about, and they shamelessly pander, shamelessly during the election. And it's like a competition to see who could be more crazy, who could be more extreme. The nativist rhetoric, the conspiracy rhetoric, all this kind of stuff. Each one-upping the next. And then they know when they get into office, they don't care about that stuff. Then they celebrate. We're in. We're good. We don't need your vote. Who cares about the Haitians in Springfield, Ohio? Who cares about the vaccines now? Who cares about the Epstein files? Try to focus, guys. We're trying to cut corporate tax cuts. Who cares about that? This is what they do with everything. And so inside of the Epstein story, yes, obviously, the Epstein files matter in themselves. They tell us other things. But this is a big conceit that is demonstrated by the whole thing. And it's incredible to witness how the narrative goes from, we will be more transparent than any administration. Here it is, guys. Here's your Epstein files. Wait, you still care about that? You're hostile to the administration. You need to switch parties. What are you, a Democrat? Why do you still care about this? And all the influencers follow suit. It proceeds from the top. The hypocrisy, the about face comes from Trump. And it trickles down and proceeds from the rest. And they go from 6 months ago, all right, everybody, promises made, promises kept. Here's your files. Here's what we promised and we delivered. 6 months later, oh, you actually wanted those files? You're stupid. I don't even want your support. You need to become a Democrat already. You still care about that? That doesn't even matter. And if you think it does, well, you're useless and an idiot, and we need to focus on other stuff. And that's Trump, and that's Pam Bondi, and it proceeds all the way down through the asshole Cernoviches, Posobics, the cat turds, the DC Dranos, all these cock-sucking influencers that are paid to lie, all these whores. And that's what they are. How did Mike Cernovich get so obscenely wealthy? Anybody know? Mike Cernovich went from a obscure pickup artist, blogger, who was writing about having sex with trannies in Thailand, chemically salty taste of their penises. That's in his blog. How did he go from that to political operator? Who paid him all this money? His patrons. He gets on his knees, he opens up his mouth, they give him the cash, and he says whatever they want him to say. And then he gets to walk around like he's the man. You have no fans. If you did a live stream, you couldn't get 300 viewers. You have no fans. You're a whore for money. Same with Jack Posobiec. Jack Posobiec 10 years ago was sucking up to Richard Spencer. I'm old enough to remember. Jack Posobiec was begging Richard Spencer to hang out with him. Hey, Richard, I'm really based. 1488, brother, I'm really based. What do you think about Harold Covington? I'm old enough to remember that. And then what happened? Oh, he took his honeymoon in Israel. He took his honeymoon in Israel, and then everybody forgot that he was obsessed with Harold Covington, trying to be Richard Spencer's best friend, and tweeting 1488 all the time. And he was also in naval intelligence. There's also in naval intelligence. Interesting. Speaks foreign languages, sort of interesting guy. And these people are paid to lie about all this kind of stuff. And you think they're on your side. This administration's on your side. This is what I want to destroy in your mind. If I achieve nothing else, I want radical right-wingers, I want white people, I want Christian nationalists to stop using the word we. When you talk about Trump, when you talk about the GOP, we have this tendency to identify with the Republican Party. Why? People say, we need to win this election. We need to do this. We. There is no we. It is not we. We are not getting shit. They are getting paid. They are getting paid to promote the GOP. They, the politicians, are getting the privileges of being in office. They are getting favors dispensed and kickbacks. They won. You, we, I did not get anything, did not get shit. Unemployment is way higher, the job market sucks, than they're letting on. And whereas the Biden administration was trying to forgive student loans and wipe medical debt from your credit score, things that actually help you, this administration's not doing any of that. Not doing any of that. They extended the corporate tax cut. It's like, so we don't get anything when they win. The Democrats and the Republicans are they. They, the Democrats, they, the Republicans, they take turns in office. Obviously, yes, the Republicans have better policies than the Democrats, but not by much. And it's a lot closer than you might think. And this Epstein thing is just the biggest example. They promised you, and they... Think about like the culture they created around this for 5 years. The way they hammed up this Epstein thing. Epstein, a pedophile island, et cetera, et cetera. And then when it's finally time to produce, they turn and say, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, you care about that? You're an idiot. Whoa, you're a Democrat. And it's like, wow. It's like they literally, it's like those TikToks. It's like a prank where you go through the drive-thru and they duck down and they come up and it's a completely different person. 5 years. We could not hear the end of the Epstein files. The second they get into office and people want them, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Oh, you care about that? Oh, get real. That's not actually affecting anybody. You care, that's a hoax. That was never real. If you still care about that, you should just switch parties already because that's not loyal. That's hostile. And they do this with everything. They did it with immigration. The second that Trump passed the big, beautiful bill, he did a rally and said, we're going to slow down the deportations for illegal immigrant farm workers. Everyone's you're not going to like it, but you'll understand. The insults keep coming. And anyway, I doubt they're going to get the votes to release these because it's going to require 2 votes from the Republicans. And you know, these Republicans are being threatened. Now, the whole weight of this MAGA machine which is just a monstrosity, how much money they've raised because of who they represent. The GOP represents now Wall Street, Silicon Valley, Israel. It's got a huge war chest, way bigger than the Democrats. And now what is that machine? What is it arrayed against now? Thomas Massie. Thomas Massie is one of the only congressmen, maybe the only Republican speaking out against Israel and saying that we should put America first. He's leading the charge on opposition to our intervention in the Middle East. He's leading the charge on Epstein. And now he's public enemy number one of MAGA. And he is being persecuted by Susie Wiles, a fucking lobbyist. He is being persecuted by Lindsey Graham, who Trump endorsed for the fourth time or third time. Think of this. Think of this. Obviously, something has gone wrong. You will not get the Epstein files, even though the Trump administration, it's their prerogative. It's their DOJ. They could do it tomorrow. They won't. They're fighting not to. They're fighting Thomas Massie. The never-Trumpers that took over MAGA world are turning the Death Star laser of Silicon Valley and Wall Street and Israel's money that powers the GOP to destroy Thomas Massie because he dared to say America first when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein and Israel. Something has gone terribly wrong. And that's why you're not going to get 2 more votes here. Where's Paul Gosar? Where is that fucking asshole? Huh? Where's Paul Gosar, the courageous hero? I don't know. Ask his wife. She knows. She runs his life. She runs his shit. Coward. Where's everybody else? Where's the MAGA caucus, huh? You have these freakazoids. Lauren Boebert, who's doing sexual stuff in the movie theater. Nancy Mace, who is a psycho. They're the only people that believe this stuff in the GOP. They're the only people that are actually true believers. Where are all these other 210 Republicans that it was so critical to go out and vote for in the last cycle? Where are they? It's no different than, do you remember in 2022 when at that time they said they were going to release the 45,000 hours of J6 Capitol footage? Remember that whole debacle? Remember when all the 2000 January 6 patriots were languishing in prison and there was 45,000 hours of footage from Capitol Hill security cameras that could have exonerated them? We were promised that in the midterms then, and they didn't deliver. I shouldn't say they didn't deliver because they did deliver the footage to somebody. Anybody remember? Does anybody remember who those 45,000 hours of Capitol Hill footage were delivered to? One person got them. One person was able to review them. Does anybody remember who it was? Tucker Carlson. Remember that whole episode? Oh, no, I totally forgot. Oh, no, I forgot. That's what they do every time. That's what they count on. In 2022, we're going to release those 45,000 hours of footage. We're going to get to the bottom of the Fedsurrection. We're going to get to the bottom of this conspiracy. Fedsurrection. We're going to get to the bottom of it. When we take the House, we're going to subpoena the government and get the footage. They didn't. Oh, wait, they did, but they gave it to one person. Tucker. Whatever happened to it, guys? Whatever happened to the footage? Notice a pattern? They did the same thing here. 2024, we're going to get to the bottom of this conspiracy. It's a pedo island conspiracy. We need to get elected to have transparency. They get elected. Oh, you care about that? You're crazy. You're a Democrat. And pay attention to every influencer on the internet. Pay attention to every dumbass influencer that is telling you you're crazy, that is against Thomas Massie. Pay attention to everyone that's on the wrong side of this issue, because it either means they're being paid, just like the Democrats. There was a big scandal that came out. I forget which publication. It was a left-wing publication. But just like all the Democrats are on the payroll of the DNC, all the influencers, it's the same with the Republicans. If anyone's against Massie, they're either on the payroll of the Republicans or they're too stupid. But do not let them gaslight you into thinking that we don't deserve this. Because, and it goes without saying, the only reason we're not getting disclosure on this is because it would indict Israel. Obviously. How about these new revelations that Peter Thiel and the Prime Minister of Israel and Jeffrey Epstein were all hanging out together repeatedly? How about that new revelation? Why do you think they don't want to release it? It's because they're implicated. The Republicans are implicated with Israel. They protect themselves. Israel is part of it. That's why they won't release it. And so this idea that, you know, we're going to vote for Trump and Trump is going to deliver the revolution, obviously he's part of it. He's with them. Obviously. Vance, Thiel, Tucker, they're all with them. Don't you understand now? That's what this shows. And if there wasn't something in there, why would they not release it? For all of these Republicans that are protesting this so much, why not just release it then? If it's a hoax, if it's a distraction, why not just release it and get it over with? Why fight tooth and nail to prevent the disclosure? Why marshal the resources against Republicans, create animosity with Marjorie Greene and Thomas Massie and the base? Why go through all this? Of course, because they're hiding something. They're protecting their own, obviously. And so the proposition of what Trump is, it's just no longer there anymore. What you're going to get from Trump is they're protecting themselves. Same story as always. Same policies, corporate tax cuts, wars all over the world. And what is the real change? It's a change in style. Aunt Jemima's making a comeback. Uncle Ben is making a comeback. Cracker Barrel logo is making a comeback. It's the Department of War. And all of you fucking idiots, all of you dummies, all the Hill people, conspiracy theorists, flyover country, the basket of deplorables, you're all supposed to eat that up. Alligator Alcatraz. Oh boy, I hear Trump's really going to do it to him this time. And they fucking close it down in 30 days. They hate you. They hate you. They think you're an idiot. And in many cases, unfortunately, they are right. And it's sad. That's your Epstein files. Yep, it's a Democrat hoax. Remember that next year when Trump is going to be begging you to vote in the midterms. As stagflation sets in, the job market is cooked. Interest rates cannot come down because inflation's ticking back up. The war in Ukraine is only going to accelerate. We're going back to Iran. When all this stuff is raging and they're begging for your vote in the midterms next year, begging you, we just need to finish the job. President Trump needs you to vote, needs a majority. We got to finish what we started. Remember when he told you, I don't need your vote. Remember when they said Thomas Massie needs to switch parties already. Remember that. They call you a Democrat because you're true to the actual America First principles from 2016. And it's incredible. You know, now they're all glazing Patrick Buchanan all the time. You see this? They're taking turns now celebrating Patrick Buchanan. And, you know, there's something funny about that. They will always glaze these people when they're inert. Have you noticed that? Pay very close attention. When Patrick Buchanan was running for president, these Trump and Tucker and all these people wanted this guy dead. Now that he's 100 years old, now they want to give him the Medal of Freedom. Come on, fossil. Come on, you fossil. Now that you can't fight anymore, now that you're 100 years old, after we destroyed your reputation, destroyed your career, destroyed your life, oh, now we want to put a medal on you and appropriate your sacrifice. We want to appropriate your integrity, your struggle, your sacrifice, your courage. We want to say, oh, retroactively, we were wrong. You were right. Here's your medal. And now we expect him to die within 15 years. You don't want to say that in a glib way, but that's what it is. Same with Ron Paul. All the same people said Ron Paul was crazy, wouldn't give him a chance, wanted him dead. Now that Ron Paul is 100 years old, oh, Ron Paul, maybe he was right. We should listen to him. When people like me and Thomas Massie and Ye and whoever, when these people are alive, they fight us tooth and nail. It's the same story. And watch, if I were gunned down tomorrow, they'd lionize me. In 20, 30 years, and in 60, 70 years, whatever, when I'm politically inert, then they'll lionize me. This is just how they play. In the now, they're screwing us over. In the now, they're screwing us over. They're pissing on our leg, telling us it's raining, doing one thing, telling us it's another. And I guess the reason that stands out to me is because when you look at 2016, who was spiritually with Trump in 16? It was the alt-right. And now here we are 10 years later, and it's just indistinguishable from the GOP. Who is in the Trump camp now? It's Susie Wiles, J.D. Vance, who was a never Trumper. It's Rick Grenell, who's a gay neocon. It's Marco Rubio, who is a neocon and ran against Trump in 16. It's Lindsey Graham, who's been around from this is MAGA now. And who's on the outside? Thomas Massie, Marjorie Greene, Nick Fuentes. In some sense, Tucker's afraid to criticize Trump. Even Tucker's drifted outside. It's crazy. The gaslighting is insane. And to me, that's the story. That's the biggest story. Maybe that's the biggest significance of it. They said, hey, you rubes, hey, conspiracy theorists, hey, Hill people, hey, all you dumb fuck Republicans that care about the pedophile island conspiracy. Don't worry, we're going to take care of it when we win. They win, they don't deliver, and then they turn and say, hey, dummies, you better get in line. It's crazy, and people take it. They created this. They played into it. They played it up. And now that the Hill people want it, they turn and say, you fucking idiots. If you still want this, you're not loyal enough. You still care about this, you should just change your party affiliation because you're not loyal to Trump. And all these suckers eat this up. All these suckers make it, John Doyle, it was surprising. He's one of these YouTubers. He did a video about it defending this, and his comment section ate him alive. So people need to understand that Trump went wrong here. This is a joke. But that's that. I do want to move on.
Release the files, brother. That's all you got to do. Release the files. You're looking guilty. This is something that you campaigned on, your entire team. And we're going to play the video that Nick was referencing with Donald Trump's son when he's talking all that ish for years about the Epstein files, saying if his dad was on the list, then it would have already been put out, saying that that's the only list that he's not on. So we're going to go through that. We're going to go through what Nick discussed with Venezuela, a whole bunch of stuff, because it really seems like as somebody who voted for Trump is just going in the opposite direction that he campaigned on. And clearly there is an influence there. I don't know what it is based on his actions. It leads us to narrow it down to a few different things, just being totally honest. We're going to get into all that. So let's start off first and foremost with what Nick started off the show on, and this whole Department of Defense turned into the Department of War. Now, I'm not sure if you saw what I posted yesterday as far as with war. I have a different opinion on war than when it comes to Nick. Totally different opinion. I'm not with war. I just don't see the purpose of it. Nick thinks that it's necessary for us to have armed conflict to resolve certain issues. I just don't think it is. I don't think it works. I don't see the benefit and advantage where you go into war, you have this violent conflict, people die, pawns die, I should say, right? Pawns die, and then the kings and queens, they get together and sit at the table and end up negotiating from the same standpoint that they could have just negotiated from in the first place before the conflict turned violent. But that's just my opinion. That's just my opinion. I think that the violence only is going to lead us towards perhaps using a lot of these weapons that we just saw with President Xi and the Chinese military parade. So when I see Trump turning the Department of Defense into the Department of War, my initial response is actually like, this is demonic, right? This is demonic. Like, this is weird. Like, why are you celebrating war? Most people try to hide behind, oh, well, this is about defense. Trump, according to Nick, right? He's trying to go on the offensive. It's like, what is going on the offensive when it comes to war? That taps into something totally different, in my opinion. This is the whole reason why a lot of us are critical of Israel when things get too much. When Bibi Netanyahu says, and speaking of influence, this is what Trump sounds like. When Bibi Netanyahu makes certain statements about, yeah, we strike first rather than allowing our enemy to hit us. Like, I'm not quoting it word for word, but I'm sure you all have heard it because he says it constantly. This is exactly what Trump's now saying. So at first I'm like, this is demonic, but then I started thinking about all this military boasting, and I was laughing when Nick said that he was comparing our military parade to the Chinese military parade, and we were walking around, a guy was walking around carrying a drone. And it's like, oh, I thought it was demonic, but what it really is just goofy. It's just goofy. Military boasting. I'm boasting about, oh, I have weapons that can destroy your country. Well, I have weapons that can destroy your innocent victims and all this, because really it's just the leaders of these countries resolving their conflicts by using the people, right? That's what ends up happening, by using the people. It's almost like, oh man, y'all know I relate everything to sports, but it's like the NFL owner. The last time I checked, NFL owners don't tear ACLs. They don't tear rotator cuffs. But their players on the field do. They sit up in the comfy seats, right? They sit up in the press box, or probably don't even come to the games, most likely, if we're being honest. So these leaders at the top, the reason why they so easily get into war, or we'll go on the offensive, we'll turn the Department of Defense into the Department of War, because they have no skin in the game. They have no skin in the game. They're not the ones that are actually going out there and fighting. Now, I know this would be the case where a lot of people who don't like Trump would throw in the whole bone spurs thing, but if the shoe fits, right? I don't want to just, hey, if the shoe fits. So it's just very goofy. It's a very goofy move, all this boasting. It's just, I don't know. It's just very corny in my opinion. But some things were mentioned that I want to go to ChatGPT for, if I may, especially with this clean break memo. So I want to read some stuff on the clean break memo. So just give me a moment to pull that up. So the clean break memo, this was written for Benjamin Netanyahu, and the main authors were Richard Pearl, a former U.S. Defense Department official, key neocon strategist; Douglas Feith, later served as U.S. Undersecretary of Defense for Policy under George W. Bush; David Wormser, Middle East analyst, later an advisor to Vice President Dick Cheney; Meirav Wormser, political scientist, co-founder of EMRI, MEMRI, that's the Middle East Media Research Institute. So I watched the debate between Nick Fuentes and Destiny, and I actually just uploaded that. That was my first time watching it, even though it happened a couple years ago on Fresh and Fit. and he was making the claims that all the authors were Jewish. So when I asked ChatGPT, of course, were they all Jewish? And he said, not all the authors of the clean, he said. ChatGPT said, not all the authors of the clean break memo were Jewish, but some were. So those names that I just named, Richard Pearl, Douglas Feith, David Wormser, Mayrav Wormser, they're all Jewish. And Wormser, I believe, is Israeli born. I'm not sure about the others, but I think it's important context for when a lot of people try to defend or contradict when people make these claims or ask these questions. They try to sweep it under the rug and say, like, here you have Bibi Netanyahu. He's commissioning these people to write this clean break memo who have obvious influence in our government. Obvious influence. And this is when we question, are they putting American citizens first and the American agenda first, or are they putting the Israeli agenda first? We have to ask these questions. So this is what the clean break memo is. And remember, this was written in 1996. So put yourself in 1996 and then understand all the things that have happened up until now and understand perhaps where we are now as it pertains to this clean break memo. So first bullet point, it says, end land for peace. Reject giving up territory like the Golan Heights or West Bank in exchange for peace deals. So pretty much no Palestine, no two-state solution, right? Remove Saddam Hussein. Push for regime change in Iraq to weaken Israel's enemies. Is this America's enemies or Israel's enemies? Because everybody likes to say, oh, it's beneficial for us to have this relationship with Israel. Well, beneficial to who? And this is what I'm reminded when Nick Fuentes, he calls out, he says white people, he said Christians, and he said radical, I think, conservatives. Stop using the word we. Who does this benefit? This benefits them, the politicians, perhaps, the ones that are receiving money from AIPAC or for whatever other organization, or receiving whatever other benefits they do when they prioritize Israel above America. If we're just being honest, we can be honest about everything else, but we got to walk on eggshells when it comes to this. No. All right. So removing Saddam Hussein, containing and/or undermining Syria, politically and militarily pressure Syria, even through preemptive strikes. Sounds a lot like Donald Trump and his Department of War wanting to go on the offensive, not just Department of Defense, right? Goofy. Strengthen regional alliances. Build ties with Turkey and Jordan to counterbalance hostile neighbors. Self-reliance. Reduce dependence on U.S. aid and rely on Israeli military strength. Can't say that that's come to fruition. That may be the only one that hasn't come to fruition. Peace through strength. Embrace preemption and hardline policies instead of negotiations. So in short, the memo was a strategy blueprint urging Israel under Netanyahu to pursue a hardline approach. No land concessions, topple hostile regimes, reshape the Middle East in Israel's favor with U.S. support. All right. All right, there you have it. Let's get back to the notes. Oh yeah, and that was funny with the whole. It's like all these name changes. Like this is what I mean by it's goofy. And Nick summed it up correctly, in my opinion, when he said, if you were doing all the other things that you promised, and then you threw in these name changes as icing on the cake, then it may be something. But not doing any of the things that you promised while you were on the campaign trail, and then changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America, or going back to the original Cracker Barrel logo or the Aunt Jemima, whatever they were doing, or changing the Department of Defense to Department of War. It's like, bro, this is goofy. Like, this only appeals. You ever heard the saying, like, this sounds smart to somebody dumb? This only appeals to somebody very simple-minded or who's just choosing to be naive in order to just be overwhelmingly loyal to a candidate rather than to the purpose. And when I say candidate, you're loyal to Donald Trump, but not to a purpose. You're a fan. You're a sports fan. And your favorite player can do no wrong. That's how you look at it. All right, so let's get to this Jeffrey Epstein files. All right, so they said no black book, no sex trafficking ring. It's just child porn. That's what they were saying, right? Even though they were talking all that ish along the campaign trail, they did that big press conference that Nick was referring to. Pam Bondi has come out and made statements saying that, oh, when this gets released, it's going to be bad. I'm going through it right now. And now what? And now what? So now we have Thomas Massie and Khanna. They're pushing for this forced vote on the floor. And they may only need 2 more Republicans. Will it happen? Nick didn't seem too confident in it, but I'm pushing for it. I'm pushing for it. And if I'll be totally honest, it's about releasing the names, and it's also about Donald Trump simply acknowledging that you campaigned on this and that you're actively hiding it. It's almost like, bro, you're not going to get away with just trying to make us or assuming that we're idiots, insulting our intelligence, acting as if, oh, you're not loyal to the team. You're I don't know, whatever. You're not a patriot if you keep requesting this. You're hiding something and you're trying to play us. And we're going to hold you to the same standard that you held all of these other politicians to. You said that you were going to be the anti-establishment guy, but now you're moving very establishment-like. You're doing the very same things as Nick's pointing out in this entire video, which is obvious to the world if you really look at it. You're doing the very same things that you used to critique other people in doing. The very same things. So, as I said, Don Jr. was talking all that ish. I'll insert that video here so you can get a little clip or a little reminder of what Don Jr. was saying.
Guy who's there, he's magically then, within hours of being, off of suicide watch, the 2 cameras that are on him happen to go out. The 2 guards just happen to... Man, it seems like a lot of coincidence. They try to make Epstein, they tried to make it about Trump. They don't talk about like the 45 times, Clinton's at the island with him with, they say, well, he met Trump at a cocktail party one time. Look, we got you. I'm like, guys,
didn't your dad boot him out of the
he was literally thrown out of Mar-a-Lago because of, some of the rumors and all of this stuff. So, and that's the problem. The news cycle, whether it's Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein's person, like she went to jail for 25 years for apparently trafficking children to nobody because we won't see those lists and there's no consequence. It's like, so you're going after Trump, but this stuff's not an issue. You put someone in jail for 25 years for apparently doing nothing because no one else partook. But like, well, Trump knew him. I'm like, you know how Trump's not involved? Because if his name was on that list, it would have leaked already.
For sure. 100%.
Like they did the redacted list and there'd be one name, like just, unredacted.
Holy
Trump.
shit.
So, but yeah, dude, crazy times. I am on every list except the Epstein list. We haven't heard anything about that one in a while. I'm fine with all the other lists. As long as I'm not on the Epstein list, we're good, right? Speaking of which, how is it that my father can be convicted of 34 crimes, but no one on Epstein's list has even been brought to light? I'm trying to figure out how that's possible, right, folks? It's almost like they're trying to protect those pedophiles for some reason. I can't imagine why, right? We're not allowed to say they're groomers, but when they act a lot like groomers, sort of tells you everything you need to know, right?
You know what it really seems like? All this critical race theory and BLM stuff that Nick was talking about, it seems like all you did was redirect the democratic victimhood to Israeli victimhood. All you did was redirect the same victimhood principles and agendas that you used to call out Trump when it came to critical race theory, when it came to Black Lives Matter, when it came to these type of things. But now you've just redirected that energy to Israeli victimhood. I didn't hear you call out the fact that when Biden pushed the minority business with, now Jewish people are considered minority business, right? I'm not sure if y'all are familiar with this, but it used to be, or there still is, like if you're Black, you get certain benefits. If your business is registered as a minority-owned business, perhaps I need to look into that. But yeah, haven't ever, but I've known about it for a long time. But if you're black, I think if you're Asian, Pacific, or Hispanic, Latino, whatever the proper term is, you get these benefits. Jewish people are now in that consideration now. Now they can also apply for these benefits. Now it's put in place with Biden, but it was in the beginning. I think it passed when Trump was just coming into office or right before he went into office. You didn't direct any energy towards that. And a lot of people may say, well, what's wrong with that? Well, it's based on race, right? It's based on right now, Jewish, I don't know what we're calling it now, whether it's religion, ethnicity, but it seems like the victimhood, and the reason why I say it seems like the victimhood has been redirected to Israel is because you don't seem to care when it's giving priority and preferential treatment towards Israel and the Jewish population. Your energy is very different. And for a lot of conservatives, a lot of y'all energy is very different when it comes to calling out the benefits that, let's say, black people receive or other minority groups, but walking on eggshells when it comes to the preferential treatment that Donald Trump is giving to Israelis and Jewish people. Or am I not allowed to say that? I don't know what it is. Like I said, it's very hard to not narrow it down towards there is an extreme Israeli influence. I don't know if it's all the money that he received during his campaign. I believe he got like 500 million in 2020, I believe it was. I may be mistaken, whether it's 2020 or this past election, but I think it's 2020. I think I heard Nick reference that in a previous video. I'm not sure if he said it in this video, but even to the point of you're sitting down, you're meeting with Bill Gates. And I actually wanted to show y'all something because I looked up on ChatGPT. Well, I'm not going to show it to y'all. I'll just read it to y'all. I'm not going to waste y'all time with showing it to y'all. But I started looking up some of this stuff with Bill Gates. I'm like, what is Donald Trump meeting with Bill Gates for? Like, what are they actually discussing? So when I looked it up, I said, why are Donald Trump and Bill Gates meeting? When have they been meeting? And these are the things that I came up with. They met in August 2025. The meeting, reported by NBC News and others, focused on the importance of U.S. global health programs and medical research. The guy that always seems to somehow bring the conversation towards depopulation and how it's necessary, he's the person that's going to have a meeting with Donald Trump to focus on the importance of U.S. global health programs and medical research. The guy that's always talking about depopulation, once again, the same guy that's always talking about depopulation, that's buying up all the farmland, that when this pandemic came initially in 2020, he was the one that was initially on TV. I saw more of him than Fauci on TV initially, and I'm sitting here thinking, like, why is Bill Gates involved in this? What is Bill Gates' background? We talk all this ish about RFK Jr., and obviously RFK Jr. is going through his own thing with a lot of the CDC, or a lot of the people from Health and Human Services. I believe it's Health and Human Services, or I don't think it's the CDC. A lot of people from that particular organization, whichever one it is. Let me actually see. Hold on. CDC. So it says right here, RFK Jr. grilled over CDC turmoil. So with a lot of these people in the CDC, they're asking him to step down. So, but it's like when it's Bill Gates, oh no, we welcome his insight. We welcome his expertise. And it's like, what expertise? What expertise? Has he researched this stuff? Has he been challenged by anybody on it? RFK Jr. at the very least has been challenged on this stuff. He's actually fought for the environment as an environmentalist attorney. But it's like Bill Gates, it's just like, oh, what has he done? He ruined Beyond Meat. Like, what is his background when it comes to this stuff? So they met about the importance of U.S. global health programs and medical research. And then he was at a dinner, I believe, last night, actually, with Trump. This was more of a tech thing. So I understand from the tech standpoint, but it's like, who do we vote for? Who did we vote for? But once again, I got to remind myself, there is no we. There is no we. There is absolutely no we when it comes to, well, Nick said white Americans, and who else did he reference? He said white Americans, he said radical conservatives, and he said Christian. I don't know if he said Christian nationalists, but he may have. Yeah, I think he said white people, Christian nationalists, and radical conservatives. Stop using the word we. There is no we. There is no we. They got stuff. They get stuff. It benefits the people at the top, the people that we're voting for, not us. And all this stuff is extremely insulting. So it just is what it is. It just is what it is. It's like Donald Trump went from campaigning and pushing for the people, right? The American people. And what did it end up turning into? No, I'm going to push for Wall Street and Silicon Valley and Israel. That's what it's turned into. And then you got a guy like Thomas Massie, who Nick was referencing. He's constantly speaking out about these things. He's constantly calling these things out. Thomas Massie is perhaps our greatest representation right now. Or let me say the greatest representation for people that are actually holding Trump to any level of accountability. And that's why they're trying to destroy him. That's why they're going to great efforts to destroy him. He's calling this stuff out. So we'll see if him and Khanna get those 2 more votes and what will end up happening with the Epstein files. But something else to look at when Nick was referencing, J6 with the 45,000 hours of footage. I had no idea. And it's almost like I'm letting y'all know I was very ignorant when it came to the hours. I didn't know that 45,000 hours was delivered to Tucker Carlson. And Nick said they counted on everybody forgetting. Not only did we forget, or maybe I did know at one point, but I don't recall that. So shame on me for not even recalling it or not even knowing about it when it happened. But maybe we need to knock on Tucker Carlson's door and just figure out, like, hey, what happened there? What happened in that situation? So it's getting more and more interesting, and I'm glad that Nick's calling out these things, because it makes you remind yourself that a lot of things, while people support a particular candidate, you can sweep a lot of things under the rug because you're pushing for a candidate, and you sweep it under the rug so much that you forget it's there, right? You forget, like, oh, I forgot that even happened, and that never came out. So yeah, there's just a lot of inconsistencies, that I would say. A lot of inconsistencies. And by the way, I appreciate y'all. So definitely wanted to make that known. I've been looking at all the comments, been looking at all the support, all the love. It's greatly appreciated, and we're going to keep pushing. I'll see you on the next one.